Hey, Michael with XForcePC. I want to talk about the new AMD system that we're selling on our website. AMD has been almost completely absent from our website for years because, what AMD has been doing for many years is they just would take their existing technology and they would just rebrand it and rebrand it and rebrand it and call it something different, and it wasn't any better, it wasn't any faster. And it just didn't really make a whole lot of sense. And so they just skewed you to death. And we just kind of got away from it. Now with the new AMD Ryzen processors, AMD is finally back in the game. Now when it comes to gaming, the AMD, well, what really matters most is per thread performance. Meaning if each core is a thread essentially. And so, most games, simulators and so forth, they prefer you to have fewer faster cores than a whole bunch of slower cores. So where AMD's Ryzen really kind of comes into play is on using software that can use 6 and 8 cores. They don't do quite as well as the Intel on the per thread performance, so the Intel counterpart is going to be slightly faster in X-Plane than the Ryzen will. So this system, the base system, comes with the Spec Alpha case. This is the same case that we use for our titanium system, but we do it in red and white. And the reason we do that, and the reason we call it the Team Red system, is everything in here is from AMD. It's got an AMD graphics card, it's got an AMD processor, an AMD motherboard, and their colors are red. So again, that's why we call it the Team Red system, in case you were wondering. Now on the front we have two USB 3.0s. We have a fan switch here, low, medium, and high. We usually say leave it in the middle for medium. And of course we have a headphone and a microphone jack. And of course, it's a very attractive case. Now let's turn this around. Normally there would be a windowed side panel here, but we have that taken off right now. We have two fans here in the front that draw air in, one fan in the back that pushes air out. Now this has the optional Ryzen 1600X processor, so it's a 6-core, and that processor does not come with a cooler from AMD. You have to use your own aftermarket cooler, and so what we did is we used a Corsair water cooler. So you see the water block here, that's where the pump is, and you see the two hoses going up. And we have a radiator right here and a fan that blows that heat straight out of the top of the case. So the heat from the processor never mixes with any of the heat in here because it travels through the liquid medium and then right out the top of the case. Nice AMD graphics card in here. We've got a couple of options for that. We've got 16 gigs of RAM, kind of become a standard these days. We have a B350 chipset. That's AMD's chipset that allows for overclocking if you decided to do that. And a little bit more on that overclocking. The 1600X has a base frequency of 3.7 and a turbo frequency of 4.0. And you can also overclock it to 4.0. But my philosophy has been, well, why overclock it to 4.0 if it's going to turbo up to 4.0 anyway? So what will happen is when the processor gets a load on it, if there's enough cooling and enough power delivery, it will jump up to the turbo frequency. Obviously we have enough cooling, we got a nice water cooler, and we've got a really good power supply, 700 watt power supply, which is more than enough, way more than enough. And so you're going to consistently see 4 gigahertz when under load, so why bother overclocking? This is on the AMD side. Now the Intel side's a different story. Now the base processor is a 1500X, and that's a quad-core processor, and it does come with a cooler, so it comes with an air cooler, the Wraith Spire cooler from AMD. Very good cooler, no reason to use anything aftermarket. It does a really nice job. It's efficient and it's quiet, and so that's what we use on the 1500X. Just to reiterate, the base processor is a 1500X. It's a quad-core processor. It runs 3.5 gigahertz as a base clock, and it turbos to 3.7, I believe. I have a little cheat sheet over here. Yes, 3.5 base, 3.7 turbo, quad core. Then you have the 1600X. It is a 3.6 base and a 4.0 turbo clock. So you get a little bit higher clock speed and you get 2 more cores. Now those 2 extra cores aren't really, at least right now, going to help you out in X-Plane, but could help you out in other things that are multi-threaded like video editing, AutoCAD, desktop publishing, 3D rendering. But probably if you're on our site, you're mostly interested in X-Plane. So your only real benefit with the 1600X, if that's the case, at least right now, is going to be that slightly higher clock speed, couple of like 0.2 gigahertz higher clock speed. So that's sort of the difference between the 2 processors. Otherwise, you can add, Wi-Fi to the system, and you can add some RAM. And then we'll look around back. Now this can vary slightly depending on which board we're using, but we've got a couple of USB 3.0s, a couple of USB 3.1s. Of course, we've got our graphics card here. In this particular one, we've got 1 HDMI, 4 display ports, and a DVI. And that's fairly typical, although that can vary, so that's not written in stone, but that is typical. That is the typical arrangement. So it's a really great system. As far as performance goes, the performance in X-Plane, because that's what most of our customers are running, is equivalent to like the i5 7500 from Intel. So it's a good solid performer. And yeah, if you got any questions, just send me an email, michael@xforcepc.com. Again, that's michael@xforcepc.com.